For this episode, viewer discretion is advised. Over the winter of 1917-1918, the mood among the Allied High Command was dark as night. The Battle of Passchendaele had produced nothing but hundreds of thousands of casualties, and the euphoria of the beginning of the Battle of Cambrai had been overwhelmed by the German counterattacks. For the first time in 2 years, the Germans had the operational initiative, and the Allies would need a new defense. I'm Indy Neidell. Welcome to a Great War special episode about the Allied Western Front defenses in the spring of 1918. Under the leadership of Philippe Pétain, the French army had rallied in the second half of 1917 after the mutinies of the early summer. It was a real force with which to be reckoned, though morale was still low and High Command could see that it was going to face a manpower crisis. So they were in no position to make new offensives as 1918 began. As for the British, Commander Sir Douglas Haig agreed to London's demand to postpone any plans for a Flanders offensive and play defense. We've mentioned in our regular episodes his manpower shortage. British Prime Minister David Lloyd George was withholding hundreds of thousands of ready-for-action troops in Britain since he was appalled by the slaughter of 1917 and thought Britain could win the war elsewhere and at less of a cost in men. So, defense it would be, but that defense would be something new. They had carefully studied the German defense-in-depth system of the Hindenburg Line and set out to build a copy. When I say a copy, I'm not kidding. British pioneers, together with German POWs and the Chinese Labor Corps, embarked on a colossal construction project to copy the German system down to the last detail, even down to the anti-tank ditches, though they'd never faced a single German tank. Like the Hindenburg Line, the British system would have a forward zone, the Red Zone, which was only lightly manned and was to delay and break up the enemy attack. The Blue Zone, a mile or two deep, would be the actual battle zone. The Green Zone at the rear was the artillery and the counterattack troops, ready to strike at the Germans trapped in the Blue Zone. Thing is, just copying the system on paper led to some serious problems that Haig couldn't really see. The manpower shortage meant that their regular troops had to work with the pioneers. This was not only not so good for morale, it also meant they didn't have time for training in how to actually fight in the new system. Soldiers felt unsafe in isolated strongpoints. Officers didn't have experience in conducting the counterattacks, and the already thin reserves were now spread out even further. Haig thought the Germans would launch a slow-burning offensive, much like the Western Front offensives of the past few years. And he told London that the new system could hold out for 18 days before he needed reinforcements. However, a slow-burning offensive was the last thing German Quartermaster General Erich Ludendorff wanted. British High Command knew he was building up for a big offensive all winter after the Eastern Front went quiet, but they underestimated the force behind it and the German shock tactics. However, when those attacks began in late March, where the British defense-in-depth system was properly constructed and tactically implemented, it absorbed the brunt of them, preventing a complete breakthrough in the northern sector of the British lines. It was in the south, in Hugh Gough's sector, where the construction of the system was incomplete and where it was poorly understood, that the German breakthrough happened. The British infantry was packed in the forward zone, where it was annihilated by artillery and then infiltrated by German stormtroops who circumvented and isolated strongpoints.
Exactly.
Oh, hey, wow, I didn't see you there. Well, okay, I can't actually see you, but you know what I mean.
Right. What a coincidence again. You're talking about the Kaiserschlacht and I'm talking about stormtroopers on my channel.
Okay, well, yeah, that is a coincidence. And you know, I never get tired of learning more and more about stormtroops, so I will definitely check out your video, and I am sure all of our viewers out there in TV land will do the same thing.
Thank you, Indy. See you around.
All right, see ya. The British were also using tanks as defensive strongpoints, which turned out to be pretty useless, and many tanks and tank crews were lost, while others preferred to bail out on foot with their Lewis guns. Anyhow, the British bore the brunt of that first wave of attacks. The French reacted quickly. Even before Haig asked for assistance, Pétain had sent reserves northward. But German raiding parties and diversion bombardments were hitting the French all over Champagne, and Pétain figured he was going to get hit with a major attack as well. He correctly surmised that Ludendorff had a lot of reserve divisions, but he couldn't figure out where the attack would come, so he could not commit a large amount of French troops to aid the British. Like Haig, he advocated a defense-in-depth system, as well as modernizing the French army with things like automatic weapons and mortars. But his system was less developed than the British because of skeptics like Ferdinand Foch, who did not believe in its effectiveness. So Ludendorff hit not only a blind, but an underprepared enemy. Pétain had remarked that when Operation Michael hit the British March 21st, they had run like the Italians at Caporetto, but his commanders who didn't believe in defense in depth would make the same mistakes as the British and Italians had when it was their turn to be attacked. The attack was a sudden, violent artillery bombardment by pre-registered guns, followed by stormtroop infiltration and a lightning-fast continued advance into open country. The German army, by that time, was pretty exhausted though, and the Allies wavered but did not fall as the spring went on. The German army could deliver a punch, but it did not have the strategic oversight or the stamina to exploit a reeling opponent. They didn't have an operative goal, and they also didn't have cavalry or armored vehicles to chase down the enemy. They could only advance on foot, and their supply system could not keep up with them either. And as the offensive stalled and the Germans grew weaker, the Allies grew stronger, and the Germans lost the battle in the air. No matter how vicious the Red Baron's flying circus was, the Germans could not match the Allied material superiority in planes, and this cured the Allied blindness. The German shock attack was no longer a shock once the German lines had been meticulously photographed from the air and their radio codes cracked. The Allies soon had a full picture of the German plans. Morale was also a factor. The Germans were certainly enthusiastic about the first few victorious days of the offensives, but when they came across all of the material, all of the stuff the British and French left behind in their retreat, the seeds of doubt were sown. The Allies had so much more stuff than the Germans did, and the morale of the British and French actually rose during open warfare as they escaped the drudgery of the trenches. And the French had their internal supply line. They had maximized the effect of their rail system. The Germans had to carry supplies over bombed-out ground. The often double-tracked French railways could easily move men and material from front to front. Same problem with airfields. The Germans couldn't just build new ones on bombed-out or contested ground. So the French and the British had the chance to establish new defensive structures and rob the Germans of their shock advantage. Defense in depth was often improvised over fields and villages, but the German inability to disrupt the Allied supply system allowed Allied material supremacy to stem the tide. By July and the German offensive towards Rheims, the Allies knew when, where, and in what strength the Germans would attack. The German attack began as planned, but the stormtroops smashed into only thinly manned French forward lines. The further the stormtroops advanced, the more they were hit by machine gun fire from hidden nests or defensive artillery. Exhausted and bloodied, they emerged from the other side of the battle zone and were stunned by what they saw. There, just beyond the range of the German artillery, stood the French army in full force, guns ready. The German offense had been beaten once and for all. Definitely check out Military History Visualized and his video about German stormtroops on his channel. He's a really cool guy. We met him a few months ago when we were down in Austria. Anyhow, if you want to see some more photos of the Entente defenses on the Western Front, just like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. And do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.